Hi, welcome to the forwardfoodtech podcast, where we explore the future of food and agriculture with the people who are taking us there. Today, our guests are Antony, Yousefian and Sadia Ahmed from BX. BX are building a two-sided marketplace that connects growers who want to store more carbon in the soil with corporates who need to offset their carbon emissions. It is farm-inspired blockchain technology, incentivizing growers to change behaviours to climate-smart practices and financially rewarding them using carbon credit tokens. Antony co-founded BX along with Ben Bardsley. Antony is passionate about technology that can drive a positive impact. He started his career in asset management and has worked on internationalising CICC, one of China's leading investment banking firms. He has over 5 years of experience working in agtech, during which he scaled the 30 MHz data platform from the Netherlands to over 40 countries worldwide. Our other guest, Sadia, is a Chief Innovation Officer at BX. Having completed her PhD in computational ecology at Imperial College London, she has spent the last decade working with large corporations on innovation and developing commercial solutions in sustainability and life sciences. In her current role, she leads the business development activities of BX on its journey to create climate tech solutions and scale up internationally. Enjoy the conversation between Rob, Sadia and Antony.
Well, welcome, Antony and Sadia, to the Forward Food Tech podcast. Fantastic to have you here because we're super excited about the fresh thinking that you're applying to, initially, I understand, the apple industry, but across a potentially much wider area. Antony, diving into you first, what are you doing with BX? Talk us through the initial headline basics, please.
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Rob, for inviting us on. Love the podcast. I got to do a shout out to the podcast, right? Always listen to it.
It's a pleasure. Great to have you on board.
always get the alerts when the new one comes on. So I appreciate it. I think I just want to start off by saying why we actually kind of built BX. I've been involved in ag tech for the last 4 or 5 years. I came quite troubled initially how the industry is set up in terms of the whole system is set up to incentivize food producers, growers, to grow cheaper and cheaper food, feed the world narrative. I just thought that was completely unsustainable. I met with Ben Bardsley, the co-founder of BX. We had to make a change to the industry. We had to get growers rewarded for their positive good that they can do, but they're just lacking the incentive. I came from the financial industry, which again, it's all about incentives and rewarding those who do. So we saw an opportunity to connect those two worlds up. Could we connect corporates and investors who want to invest in impact and positivity, and growers who can, if we can just measure and quantify it. So this is what we designed with BX, is this two-sided marketplace where we are incentivizing growers, starting in perennial, which you mentioned, to change behaviours to climate smart practices and financially rewarding them. And we're utilizing some of the latest technologies that are out there to activate that, which is smart contracts on the blockchain.
I'm going to hold you there because we'll go a lot deeper, I promise you. So in essence, what we're saying is that you created a platform that farmers, if they follow that platform, will get paid for how they're doing and be rewarded for what will be a more sustainable way of farming perennial crops.
Correct.
Awesome. We'll go into a lot more detail in a second, but I want to bring in Sadia. Sadia, what got you into this industry? What was your attraction to this? You're keen on innovation. I'd love to understand what you're thinking around on how innovation could play its way out.
So I suppose I'll start off with how I got into this. I've always been interested in the natural world and how humans interact with the natural world. All my original degrees were very much looking at that interface. And over the years, I've become more and more commercial in the sense of, how do you take fundamental research and turn it into products and services? And I think that I've seen a huge gap within the food industry, how we produce our food, where we get it from, the supply chains we use, the fundamental ways that we're growing food. There's so much scope for improvement. Currently, agriculture is one of the biggest contributors to climate change and to environmental degradation. But on the other hand, it is itself an ecosystem, and it can be a fantastic ecosystem if we treat it the right way. And so for me, it's always been about how can I have impact in this? And I think BX is a wonderful way of doing it, creating that change in an industry by setting up the right mechanisms.
Well, that's very emotive stuff, and in fact, it's a big challenge, isn't it? Which I think we're all very aware of. So, Antony, back to the business model. Tell us a little bit about Barnsley as well, and the fact where this idea came from. Because what I love about what you're doing is that this is a farm-inspired technology. This has come from the farm.
Yeah, I suppose it comes back from my experiences in ag tech, where I found product development was so slow because of seasonality, very costly for ag tech. So wouldn't it be better if we just built an ag tech business inside a farm so we could iterate on a daily basis, and not just a small 1 hectare, 2 hectare trial? We need to do this, prove this out on big commercial scale. Like, that's what everyone always calls out for when you go to these ag tech centers, is like, we need to see this working in the commercial environment. So this is it. This is exactly it. So BX was basically built inside Bardsley, England, who are now the second largest top fruit grower in UK. And Ben Bardsley has scaled up that business very, very quickly in the last few years. It's proving to be quite successful. I think it's a future model which others should do. You also then get buy-in from the grower and the growers, which is huge, because normally there's that reluctance and concern. We know it's a conservative market. So this business model of doing those first early iterations on farm is proving to be a very successful, I believe, a successful model, which I hope other people copy.
It is, because I can see why it would be. One, speaking as a farmer that did take business from his farm, but other top fruit growers in this case also will be other crops later on. But it's so much more believable when a key business that's very commercial is actually looking at it. The bit I found interesting about this is that, of course, it's a good way for you to buy technology for your own farm, because you're working with others to get a critical mass to make it wider and unit costs more affordable for everybody. That's an interesting angle here, because I guess if you're an arable farmer and you built your own combine, it probably costs more money than buying it off the shelf. And I get this sort of ag tech comparison here that's the same position. I'm going to go back to Sadia here now. You've got an incredible academic background. It's really wonderful to see such a highly qualified person working in this sector. Give me an example of the sort of stuff you're working on right now that you really enjoy doing, and maybe hopefully this will inspire somebody to even join your business, or at least be inspired to be involved with the industry.
And I think that's a really key point for us in terms of getting the right types of skills and talent into the agricultural industry. I think traditionally it's been seen as a rather conservative, the type of industry you might not go into, but it is becoming more and more technological, and that's the way it has to go. So so in terms of some of the projects that I'm working on right now that I'm really excited about, I think the one that I'm most excited about right now is looking at biodiversity. So we've spent, and the academic community has spent decades trying to work out how you measure and value biodiversity. And one of the projects that we're working on right now is, how do you measure biodiversity on the farms in a way that is comparable globally, but also useful and doable at scale, that doesn't rely an entomologist come in with traps and trap the insects and then spend hours looking down a microscope to identify them. And so we're looking at how we can scale up that biodiversity monitoring, which I'm really excited about. Another project that we're looking at is linked to biodiversity, but primarily linked to soil dynamics. So as we get more and more programs around sequestering carbon using agricultural soils, there are lots of questions that come up around, how do you know when to sample? What's the correct sampling regime? And currently those answers don't exist. You can't go to a textbook and say, okay, well, I'll look this up and I've got an answer. We've got industry standards and we've got a lot of literature, but converting that information into something commercial, that's another project that we're looking at in terms of doing our own soil experiments, going out, measuring at super high density to find out what is the cutoff point for us getting the information we need to issue carbon credits in a reliable, robust and measured way.
And I guess that problem solving part is what it's all about. I mean, the cliche is that you jump out the airplane and build the parachute before you hit the deck, which is, I guess that's very relevant here. You've done a lot. You've been involved with some really interesting businesses. What are the mistakes in the past that have informed you to think differently today?
Mistakes. Yeah, don't go into finance. No, that's not true. If I just work backwards, like the mistakes that I think we made at 30 megahertz. I started my ag tech journey there. But this is the problem I think a lot of ag tech struggle with, is understanding your value proposition very clearly. And we were very worried about trying to push for that value proposition. And you just run around you got a hammer and you're trying to find a nail to, with your solution to kind of fit it in with. So we were just struggling to, find that right market that we're finding our project. But we thought we had the product. The product wasn't good enough. And so I think you just needed to just take it to kind of slow down and spend time with the customer a bit more deeply to understand that. So if we could go back again, the mistakes are made is I suppose doing more market research. We should have maybe brought in, it was a beautiful story that we were a group of engineers and enthusiasts who wanted to change agriculture at 30 megahertz, but we probably didn't have that domain experience. It helped us that we were like, hey, we're coming in to kind of help improve your environment and make you a better grower, but can you tell us what to do? Can you tell us? So I think now it would have been better if we had that domain experience, but at the same time, not having it enabled us to ask the question from a different angle, which was really, really important.
This is the classic innovation paradox, isn't it? That no problem is solved from within the world it's created. At the same time, you need to understand what that world is.
I think that's one of the key differences with BX. We've deliberately incubated ourselves on farm, and we've deliberately built a team from a really diverse background to address that.
And you've always got Ben to remind you of the true farming element, which I'm sure he does very, very eloquently and directly. Incidentally, we love his videos. He's just done a cracking job, and it certainly put a smile on my face during lockdown here in the UK. I'm sure around the world, they're phenomenal. We were talking before we went live about the moment when he did the frost sprinklers and showed this bud of an apple crystal in a sort of protective ice cube. It was stunning. It was really something almost out of Disneyland. It's actually all about communication. So I guess that probably draws us into another area here. How are you going to scale your business that you're creating at BX?
We were having this conversation the other day about, look, we're having this issue at the moment, partly with investors, for example, right, into BX. There's definitely, let's just say, everyone thinks about carbon. And let's just talk about carbon and communication. It's a carbon cycle, right? It's a cycle, and everyone's a bit obsessed at the moment about how can we just chuck it back in the ground, And before you can, there's so many other things that have got to happen before that occurs. And I think if we just chuck it back in the ground, there's going to be unintended consequences for that. The reason why there's other greenhouse gases up there as well, which are warming up the planet, to be quite clear. But it's the ecosystem services which we've destroyed, which is obviously put everything off balance. So we're finding, partly also in the carbon credit market, there's an obsession right now about, how permanent is that carbon in the ground? How can you keep it there for 1,000 years? We're not going to be around to anyone to even check that anyway. But you can't keep carbon in the ground. It shouldn't be kept in the ground. It's a cycle. We're all made of carbon. So I think there's a big education process going on here. We've got an education process to go on the grower side as well, where we're trying to not educate them, but give them the confidence and the data to transition. It's amazing the conversations we have with a lot of the growers we're having now, and it's been great. A lot of people going, look, hey, we're doing this already. Can we get involved? They're like, we've been wanting to do this. We were already doing this. We're just actually frustrated. We're not being rewarded for it. We're just constantly working against a tide, which is working against us. So it's amazing how many people actually are really up for it. They open their books and say, look, I've got a book on this. It's from 1946 and 1930. This is how they used to grow. And I know this is true. It's quite actually an open door, but there's a kind of a communication exercise to go on there as well, which we're trying to build that into BX. So as much as it's a technology and software platform, there's a huge human element to it. Each of our customers are well supported by people within BX from, we do have, as Sadia said, we've got people in our team with diverse backgrounds. We've got data analysts, technical account managers from the industry, and then also climate smart advisors as well, who've done these practices. They're in our team as well. So really, I think you're right. It's a massive communication exercise, but we have been on this journey on climate change anyway already.
And so keep you on the communication thread for a moment. Will you be communicating this on the pack, on front of pack with the product? And how will that look? As in, will I start to recognize this across a range of products?
Yeah, no, sure. So the step one for us is giving the growers the power and the capability to have that information, and it's up to them how they want to utilize that information. They want to put it on their packs, all power to them, and we want them to. But it shouldn't come the other way down. It's just I think it's happening at the moment. Is you should put that on there and do it at whatever cost. It should be grower-led. This is our numbers and this is our data, and it's on our pack.
Okay, so maybe I didn't explain that very well. What I mean is that will there be a brand BX that I put on pack that then to a consumer that I go, oh, okay, I ate Braeburn apples from there, and I saw that, or I read about that thing that I now understand is good for the environment. I'm now buying a Cox's apple from another farm that's bought into your system and still has that recognized system for how they farm from your way of doing things. Is that what's going to happen? Is that where you see it going?
I think it's a huge opportunity to do that. There's a huge opportunity to do that, and it needs to be data-backed, a data-backed brand. And is that BX? Maybe. Okay. We're working on it. But I think
it's.
I was going to say, but I think the key part about it is whether it's a BX brand or another brand, the point is BX will be providing the data and the information that is required to back it up. That's very much the part that we are definitely playing today. And, our entire ethos is around as much evidence as we can possibly gather.
And I guess under scrutiny, which is where you were touching, I think, before about the carbon cycle, Antony, it's got to stand up to that, isn't it? If I'm paying good money as a large corporate to buy credits from this, could you see any situation where consumers actually subscribe to this?
I completely think it's possible. Fundamentally, the Earth Exchange is an open marketplace, and we're not going to put restrictions on who can come in and purchase investment tokens or carbon credits. It's going to be an open marketplace, just like any other exchanges.
So we're looking at crowdfunding potentially by way of a subscription, even for people that believe in how you farm, which by the way you've been doing the work on LinkedIn, you're already pretty good at it. I'm in if nobody else is. It's great. It's really exciting to see.
That's the fundamental principle behind our ESI NFTs.
So just for the want of simplicity, what do those acronyms mean?
Sorry, an ESI is an ecosystem improvement token. The idea is that we segment the orchards from our customer base on the farming side into digital tokens that represent a specific area of land. And there are two reasons we do this. First is because the digitized nature of it helps with blockchain technology, but also by tying it to a specific area on a map, you guarantee that you're not double counting, because we then cannot sell that we can't sell the same plot of land to two people, because you can see it's that GPS location and it's that boundary. So that's fundamentally what an ESI is. It's that representation, and the fact that we tokenize it, it acts like a non-fungible token on the blockchain. It's unique and it can't be replaced with another token, essentially.
So can I buy and sell it?
Yes.
Correct. Yes. I'd like to say there's a new world forming here, obviously, with blockchain, and there's a whole new asset base in terms of being created. And we know ecosystem services, it does 2x, well, used to. The research says it used ecosystem services, be it pollination, carbon sequestration, biodiversity, nutrient cycling. These provide to the economy 2 times global GDP. But we're destroying it at a rate of between 5 and 20 trillion a year at the expense of GDP growth. So if we can digitize those ecosystem services and make them a valuable asset and investable assets, people can then start investing in them and getting, backing them and regenerating them. This is what we're most excited about the Earth Exchange platform.
Just as a side note, the Earth Exchange is BX's trading platform for carbon tokens. It's not fully functional yet, but it is in its infancy at bx/earth.com. You can already register interest to buy these tokens on their website. You will see a list of fields that corporates can invest in directly and help growers transition to sustainable agriculture. Now back to the podcast.
You can start to then channel capital towards it and back those who can repair it. You can make money on saving the planet, we believe. And why not? Take me to jail for making money on saving the planet, right? Not me, but everyone else. That's the best thing ever. Let's stop getting addicted to Instagram and everything else. So yeah, I'm coming out now with all our secrets. We're going to use the same tactics that Facebook and Instagram use to get you addicted, right? We're going to get you addicted to saving the planet. Sadia's shaking her head now because I'm getting too excited, but it's true. It's true. It's like, you know, it's not a bad thing, is it, Rob?
So, well, it isn't. I mean, I guess this is the difference, though, surely, to somebody buying shares in a company that has values that you agree with,
Yes.
to somebody that's speculating and looking to make money on that asset becoming more valuable, to then cash out on that. And I guess there's a moral dilemma there to a certain extent. At the same time, the profit of that would go to the buyer, wouldn't it?
Oh, right. So so we've built a smart mechanism on this. So any profit that is made from those investors, the corporate base, from the ecosystem improving, there's a clawback mechanism where that clawbacks and takes a profit, like a tax, back off that profit and redistributes it to all the growers on the platform. So it's like a community base. We're all going to lift and make this better, and there'll be some trading between it. And then if there's any profit making, then all those returns, 50% of those returns come back to the so we're incentivizing better behavior.
Wow, that's really advanced. Just to be slightly cheeky, what happens if there's a loss?
Well, we can't, nothing's free in life. I know we can print more money like the governments do, right? But yeah, nothing. It's, there's a loss. There's a loss. These are risks. This is a.
So the loss would be absorbed by the buyer, wouldn't it? And I'm trying to think why there would be a loss, because I could presume that the person that bought it, who was a speculator, didn't see the growth that they thought, and therefore wanted to get out.
So there could be issues like the ecosystem values declines. So let's just say the carbon that's been in the soil right now just completely disappears due to an accident or something like that. Then the characteristics driving the ecosystem value, biodiversity just disappears because of something happens. These things can happen.
Let's say we have a grower who's working in the Brazilian Amazon and policy changes, and therefore the practices change markedly. That could be an example where you could see that loss. But in some ways, that's no different than when you invest in any other stock or share of a company.
Unless I've misunderstood this, which is possible, I guess that in some ways then the owner of that token at that moment is almost like the guardian of what's happening. So I think you've actually hit on something fascinating, because the biggest problem I've had personally with arable farming, doing carbon sequestration trading, is who's going to check that farm is still going to be doing what it's doing in 10 years' time? Because quite frankly, the farmer could be, at the pearly gates, dead and buried. And a new person comes along and says, thanks very much for farming it beautifully for the last 10, 20 years. You've increased the organic matter, you've increased the carbon storage. I'm now going to farm it like, frankly, people have been farming the previous century and rip the hell out of it, because I can do. I own the land. I bought it. I suppose at that point, the token owner, would they have any influence on that?
We will measure regularly as part of being on the platforms. We measure annually, the grower. So there's like kind of that happens, as well as the software that they're utilizing actually monitors on a daily basis, because they're helping operationally as well. That data source is going to be exposed to the trading exchange as well. So you can easily see, as well as, this is public. This is on the blockchain. So there's nothing hiding here. So if you sign up to this, you're signing up to transparency. But you want us to be transparent because you're a good person and you're wanting to do something positive. If you're a bad actor, you're going to get found out quickly. And then that's public. That's always forever going to be public. If you're a bad actor, it's printed in the blockchain. It's what I mean. But generally, we know 99% of growers are wanting to do good. They're just
I'm being devil's advocate here. This is not about us. It's about our children and their children. And if they turn around and say, what a bloody stupid idea that was 20 years ago, because they didn't think about locking the safe door. They put the currency of carbon credits in the safe, but they forgot to lock it. And somebody's come along and pinched it all. So if there is what you've got there is a moral guidance system. If there is more of a stick, and i.e. a penalty of some sort, then that perhaps could be the other side of this that needs to be in. But this is just a thought. But what you're doing is really exciting, and essentially dealing with a way that doesn't rely on government or policy in the way that it needs subsidy or some sort of handout, and getting the entire economy involved with it, rather than just a farm being bullied into doing something that they probably can't afford to do.
Just one last point on using a carrot versus using a stick, and we've been very clear that we actually actively don't want to use a stick. stick. And there are there's lots of reasons behind that, not least because they're not effective. And, a point in case is, let's take speed cameras. Speed cameras are fundamentally a stick. A lot of people treat speed cameras as, I will slow down as I come up to it, and then I'll speed up after I go past it. You have a little bubble of compliance around that. So people are only behaving when they're being watched, potentially. We don't want that happening with our system. It's not about, if you do this bad, you'll be punished for it. It's about positive rewards and people doing things because the system we creates an environment where they want to do the right thing, and it becomes a no-brainer to not do it or to do it.
And that's where the guardianship comes in, and that's really smart. Yes. I totally agree with you. The problem with any protocol that's out there is that once they meet a minimum standard, or in your case, the below a medium maximum speed limit, yes, they've done the job. So then it comes down to, in the farming case, the biggest player wins thereafter, because everything else is fair game once you hit the minimum standard. Whereas if you've got a never-ending higher standard, then it's only a race to the top, not to the bottom.
Exactly. So it's about continuous improvement.
That's exciting. Let's go to the financials for the farm. How much, just rough idea, for a potential farm that might want to be part of this, not talking about Barnsley now, we're talking about one of your customers. What sort of returns do you think you'll be able to help with them, as well as obviously the environmental impact that you're looking to achieve and all the other benefits of that? What actual cash are we talking about here?
I think the easy win, the one to easy refer to is inputs. Okay. You're suddenly becoming incentivized because you're worried about that input has an emission impact, and then also look at the damage it's actually doing to the soil. So there's untold evidence and stories and podcasts around the world that showing people, quotes, they've reduced their inputs by 50%. And they're just some numbers.
So on an apple business, just for the listeners, what does that, 50% reduction in inputs? You're talking about ag-chem inputs, aren't we? Yeah. And how much is that? How much is that a hectare?
It's over £1,000 a hectare.
Okay, so whatever that is, that's 400-ish pounds per acre, $500 an acre, something like that. Yeah. Okay, just for want of the international listener. So you reckon you could halve that, and when you've got a big business like Barnsley, that's a big saving. The first saving is on reducing ag chem inputs. And then
on that input, like, who does that input, right? There's a labour saving there as well, right? You didn't have to run that tractor through. That's an emission impact as well. Okay. So there's multiple butterfly savings there.
That I appreciate. What are the extra costs then that I'd like to have?
I mean, there is also an argument that actually, because I like to call them drug addicts, these trees. They are drug addicts, or it's a bit harsh, but like it's like you and I waking up every day and bleaching ourselves every single day and dousing ourselves and drinking antibiotics. It's just like, that's what we're doing to our food system and doing to our trees. So to just suddenly stop doing that, it's probably not going to be easy for you. If you've been used to that, you're going to go a bit cold turkey. So there is a bit of a transition phase. So it is also probably recommended you spend more on nutritional inputs. Instead of spraying a fungicide and a pesticide and a herbicide, could you apply nutrients to tackle that fear of that disease? The disease is coming because of the nutritional deficiency. So could you give some nutrients so that disease doesn't proliferate? So you could actually spend just as much in some cases, on the first 2 years on the same inputs. But you've got to start measuring. You've got to measure your soil. You've got to measure like your sap analysis, and then you can see what is deficient there, so you can make that better decision.
In a nutshell, what you're saying is that I can save money on inputs, but there will be other costs to get there, but we're going in the right direction because of that. So it's fairly cash neutral.
The point being that everyone looks for a formula. Every field and every soil is different. And this is why at BX, we basically build digital twin, arguably a database per every single field has a different world. And we just treat it independently. It just like that field cannot be the same as that one. We then compare, you are very characteristically similar in all your characteristics of your practices, to your weather, to your soil conditions. Now, okay, that one did 5 tons and that one did 1 ton. There you can apply a similar formula. You can't take this blanket approach. It's an ecosystem of different ecosystems. So that's why I'm a bit like, some you might, some you won't. But you've got to have the data to make those, to be able to make those smart decisions. At the moment, it's just too blanket, one formula reduced down. That's the problem.
No, I appreciate that. And when would the token payment start to kick in, and what sort of money would the farmer get?
Yeah, so if I just go back to the kind of how the business model works for the grower, our software that we build for the grower, it sits as an intelligence layer. One, it helps them drive operational efficiencies, which you kind of described there. It will give them visibility to save money on labor, to save money on inputs, and just make better decisions. That's what most farm management software do, but this is the intelligence layer because it's integrating the data. But more importantly is when the grower onboards our platform, they sign up to the Earth Exchange. They sign up to the 4 climate smart practices, which we guide them to do. So it's first one is increase biodiversity. When a grower onboards to BX, we give them 2 solutions. One is the software for the grower, and that gives them operational efficiency. It gives them visibility on their operations to make better decisions, to save on inputs, save on labor. And then we also create the tokens for them, which get issued to the exchange, and that's done on an orchard by orchard level, which we discussed earlier. And when you issue that token, you sign up to this smart contract, which is the climate smart practice of increasing biodiversity, protecting the soil and the carbon there, increasing soil life, and producing carbon neutral food. Now, let's just take that first one there, increasing biodiversity. Well, let's say you sell one of your tokens for £1,000 or $1,000 for your international listeners, $1,000. We will release the capital from that sale as soon as those pillars are hit. So once they're verified that pillar, let's say increased biodiversity, has occurred, then the financial incentive is released. The grower then knows that cash is there. If I do this, I'm going to get rewarded. Not, I hope the supplier will pay me for this positivity, or they'll get more of my price at the end of the year. What price I'll get. They've got guarantee that they're going to get that reward. So it incentivizes the behavior and rewards the behavior. And we predict that more and more, these tokens are going to increase in value. So then more and more people are going to be wanting to enact these behaviors. So it's a smart contract. It's
Kickstarter, meet crowdfunding, meet legislation, environmental best practice all in one. Okay.
Exactly.
It's really, I can see why you've been scratching your head and working so hard for so many months. I mean, so hard to get hold of now. You've been busy, haven't you? I think we could talk all day, but I think what we've got here is a really innovative, talk about innovation. This is really dramatic and it's fantastic what you're doing, guys. I understand you're raising money at the moment, or are you? What stage are you at with that?
Yeah, we're middle of a capital raise at the moment. Yeah, hoping to close it soon.
If you're interested in investing in these guys, the contact details will be in the footnotes. And talk about some of the other crops you're going to be working with, Sadia, and then we'll wind up.
Yeah, so our entire focus currently is on perennial crops. So anything that goes into the ground and stays there for longer than a year. So we've started in apples. We're then going to move into pears, apricots, plums. We're also looking at things potentially like teas, coffees, avocados, citrus. We're pretty open. I mean, we've got a list of 20 crops that we think we can realistically go into fairly easily from our starting point. And then we'll see about going into other crops going forward.
Brilliant.
Antony, do you want to add anything to that?
No, focus. Mistake I didn't make before, right? So Rob, you asked the question, mistake, focus. focus.
So you've got a big idea, but you focus on launching, get it and going in apples. And we'll stick with that until that gets going. Finally, both of you have achieved an awful lot already in your lives and going to achieve a hell of a lot more going forward, I'm certain of. Who are the top couple of people that you would like to thank in how you've got here?
So a turning point for me was when I was in the banking side, and there was a gentleman called Ben Hutchinson. It was my sales on the desk manager. We basically were building up the sales and trading platform there. We just were very frustrated by, we wanted to do more and have more impact. And, this is the person I was looking up to. And he just left and joined us. He left and went, I'm going to leave this. I'm a really well-paid job. I'm going to leave this. I'm not happy. I'm going to do something more impactful. And he joined a tech startup business, which was fantastic. And that just inspired me. If you're not happy in what you're doing on a daily basis, don't just go with that.
I love that.
Yeah. So be inspired to kind of go elsewhere.
I love that. And obviously the financial part is hardwired within this BX model, which you learn in the trade. And also it's a tech startup. So that's a perfect combo. Sadia, what's your top person?
Well, you've excluded family, so that's fun. I think I would have to thank pretty much all the lecturers and guys who I came across while I was at Imperial, they really helped form my curiosity and my desire to find things out. And then some of the great business leaders who I've worked with over the years, who've helped me become who I am today and, how I like to operate and work. So, people like Stephen Emmett, Rob Ewers. I could go on, but no man's an island.
Sorry, this isn't an award speech. You're reading off loads of people.
Oh no, I can keep going. There's not a single person. That's the problem.
I think we're all. Wonderful thing about farming is that actually it is a big family, and the more we work together and think of it like that, the more we'll make big progress. It's been wonderful meeting you again, guys, and congratulations to BX. Keep the LinkedIn footage going. We all love it. Good luck with everything. And thank you again for today's call. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Rob.
Europe.
Thanks very much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. For more information and takeaways from this episode, please visit forwardfoodtech. See you next time.